the other day I was running and I found these beautiful little spider webs that just look like
Yes.
chandeliers, and so exquisite, so perfectly made. And if I took a picture close up of the web, and the web is perfectly in line, tiny little microscopic squares, just absolutely perfect all the way around this chandelier that's holding all of these shiny dewdrops, right? And you look at this and you think, I actually put this in a post on my Instagram. I said, like, these spiders literally just get up every day and create this absolute masterpiece. They don't think
Yes.
about it. They just know how to do it, and they do it. What makes you think that you as a human being, with all of your neural capacity, with all of your mind and your thinking, your rationality, what makes you think that you aren't also in the process of, or at least have the ability to be in the process of creating something beautiful with your day and exquisite? Like, what's your excuse, right? If this tiny little spider, like if this tiny little spider just gets up every day and creates this exquisite masterpiece, like, why are
Yes.
we so confused about why we're here? It's such an interesting time to be alive, because we have so much information and there's so much to process, but how much of it is necessary? I guess that's the question. What's real and what's not? What's necessary and what's not? But talk to me
Yes.
about culture. I want to hear about culture from you, because you play is it the dulcimer? Is it?
Yes. I play, well, I call it a dulcimer. It's really a one of a kind thing, because
Yeah.
I had this guy make it for me, but it's based on a hammer dulcimer and has 5 octaves, fully chromatic. And it's, it when I was young, when I saw a smaller version of this instrument, it beeped at me. It was like this instant vocation, in the true sense of that word, a calling that, attention, Sharon Lebell, you must do right by this instrument and liberate its beauty. Get going. And there's nothing grand. I mean, it's not for myself. It's not, I'm duty bound to, I'm like that spider. I mean, we're all like that spider. If we would but listen to these callings that we get from life. But that relates to what you just said, Simon, that we are so besieged with information that our job most of the time is what I would call the big sort, putting, okay, that's trivial, that's evil, this is good, this is important. And we're kind of exhausted by the big sort. But if we can just listen, I mean, I don't want to sound like a crackpot, but I just believe that life speaks if we can turn down the volume on the junk, or just the secondary, the tertiary. That I'm not sure I answered your question. You said, "What
You
about
definitely did.
culture?"
No, continue with your thinking, because I that idea of the instrument speaking to you and saying, liberate my beauty, like dedicate yourself to me, is something that I think a lot of musicians experience. And I think music and art is one of those things that has to be, that's why we call it an outlet, right? It's like you're letting out something within you that is able to, and this speaks to something that's more human than almost anything, right? It's our ability to take basic raw elements and turn them into something that is absolutely exquisite, right? We are creators. Yes. That's what we are. We need that outlet to be able to use our hands and our minds to make something that you could even say mimics nature, mimics the beauty that we see within nature. And all that art and music and all of these beautiful things in culture are, is it's a representation of the culture that we see around us, the world that we see around us, right?
Yes.
And so what's the experience for you like? Because the Stoics really, they didn't have a great affinity towards culture and music, right? It wasn't necessarily
Right.
something that they thought about a lot. But you see something like, I had a conversation with a wonderful philosopher, Peter from Poland yesterday, and we discussed the idea that Christianity, one of the reasons why it may have been so successful is because it embraced culture, it really embraced music and art and exquisite architecture, and all of these things were important because they are expressions of our divine power to create and bring something into being that didn't exist beforehand, right? So what's the experience like for you with music and culture, and like, what does it bring you, is what I would ask. My 10-minute question.
Yeah. It brings me a, a place in the world. It justifies my existence. It doesn't exalt me, but it gives me my job, my marching orders. And frankly, I think anytime we have an idea that goes through our minds, obviously we can't act on any idea that flies through our heads, but there are certain ideas that are a little more sticky, right? They keep returning, or maybe they change in form a little bit, but they keep saying, hey you, hey you, hey you. And I don't know, I just believe we have a duty to realize those ideas, to make the spider web, because no one else can do it. It's like the idea, the notion chose us to bring it into being. And let's see, let me circle back to your question though. What does it do for me? Yeah, like I say, it just tells me which seat to sit in the theater of life. Oh, you're in row 3K, that's your seat. And if everyone will just sit down in their seat and do what they're supposed to do, then this big machine will hum like a butte. Forgive me if I'm getting too abstract.
That's way too powerful for me. Hey, I'm struggling here, because that's something that I've been really thinking about lately. It's this idea of, what if everybody just decided to listen to the things that they were really drawn to? Like for me, from a young age, I was drawn to music, and particularly jazz. I was very talented in jazz, and I haven't developed that skill to the best of my abilities because I leaned upon my talent, as opposed to realizing that this is a duty that you have now to respect this instrument and to bring forth your talent within this instrument or your voice. And you see this with people who, for example, master the English language, somebody who can get up there on stage and can make you see something or feel something you couldn't feel before, simply by choosing the correct code of words, right? And what is more powerful than somebody who's mastered an instrument and is standing up on stage and showing you that they have spent their entire life dedicated to embodying everything that this instrument could be if they actually spent the time, right? And there are people out there who are absolutely made to be the absolute best mechanic that they could be. There are people who are supposed to be the best doctor. And even with money, I've been playing with this idea that you look at people like Warren Buffett. He's good at what he does because he can't do anything else. That's what he's drawn to. He loves making money. He loves investing. That's it. That's his web,
That's
right?
his spider web. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the idea that I really think is important about aligning with nature. It's like, what is your nature? Listen, stop for a second, pause all this. What's your seat? And I think you portrayed it perfectly there. It's like, if we all sit down in the theater of life and we understand and we're able to stop thinking about everybody else's mission and start just listening to what we're drawn to, what would the world look like if everybody just did the thing that they were drawn to do?
Right. To
I
me,
don't.
that's what virtue is.
Yeah,
Sometimes people say, well, what's virtue? What's goodness? I think it's heeding those calls.
yeah,
And it's not about yourself. It's about what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah. And don't people say that? How many people do you hear saying that, where they get to a certain level of success in whatever they're doing and they say, well, this is no longer about me. This is so much more important than me. This is something is driving me. And often that is represented in people's belief, you might say. It's like, hey, something's driving me. I don't know what it is. I can't really explain it, but let's just call it God, or let's call it Muhammad, or let's call it this or that, or let's call it nature. Let's call it, whatever it is, a divine intelligence. And I don't want to go too far into that because people can get turned off, but I think that there's something really important in that, right? There's something important in that place that you get to where you realize that this is all far, far bigger and far more out of my control than what I had previously thought, right?
You speak the truth. Yes.
I hope so.
Yes. It's really big.
Yeah.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is take your seat and do what you have to do. It's not
Or
that
jump on stage and start playing,
or jump
right?
on stage. Yeah, whatever it is, whatever the moment calls for.
Yeah.
Whatever the moment calls for.
And maybe to circle back, I mean, this brings us back to the idea that we should be able to understand that we have our own unique nature. Somebody else doesn't fit with that, and that's perfect, right? Because
Yeah,
everybody
thank
has to have some
goodness.
sort of place. Thank goodness
Yeah,
that
thank
not
goodness.
everybody
Right.
is. And there's a real push for people to be something other than what they actually are these days. You see so many people going to university picking degrees that they're not really interested in, but their mum told them, oh, you should probably be an accountant because that's probably going to get you a good job after university, and great. Or you should
Yes.
probably do this or that. But everybody comes to a point in their lives where they start to think, what could I have been if I had just followed the things that I was really interested in? And yeah, okay, this is my last question to you. How do you quiet the voice, and how do you listen if you've never really listened to that before? How do you recognize when there's a moment where you should probably be drawn in that direction? How do you recognize that? I don't want to call it a voice, but
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Well, I guess I hear that voice audibly when I make it a habit to settle my mind. And my particular idiosyncratic ways of settling my mind are I go out my door and hike. I have the good fortune of living in a fairly rural area, and I can just step out and walk for 13 miles in amidst redwoods. I realize that's a luxury, but that's one thing I do. And the other thing I do is I have a daily yoga practice, which somehow it just makes my jabber mind shut up and allows the important fundamental I don't know, injunctions or to surface. Now, I'm not prescribing hikes or yoga to anyone. We all have our different ways of calming the busy mind. so that the good stuff, the real stuff, can come true. But I guess I would urge, again, I'm not being prescriptive in any way, but I think it's just so valuable to find out what allows you to let go and to listen. I don't know how else to say it.